Hey everybody, today's video is shot in VR180, and essentially what that means is that if you're wearing a VR headset, you'll be able to see 180 degrees in front of the camera. And the reason we want to do that is because we're going to be going to different locations and showing you some pretty cool features and basically make you feel like you're actually there with us. Now for everyone else that doesn't have a VR headset, this video will just look like a 2D video, so you probably won't notice a difference. But if you do have a VR headset, I recommend putting it on now. Now today, we're going to Dave & Buster's in Vaughan, Ontario to show you a whole bunch of brand new arcade games that I think are pretty cool.
There's a lot of gamers out there that think that arcades are dead, but that couldn't be further from the truth. We're here today in Vaughan, Ontario at Dave & Buster's to take a look exactly at what a new arcade looks like and how it's evolved over the years. I've got no doubt that a lot of you may remember what arcades were like back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and even the 2000s. And I know that there's a lot of you that may not remember what those places are like, but did get to see them in movies. And generally the concept was they were very small and compact with a lot of games stuffed inside. Usually they were dimly lit, and let's be honest, sometimes they had sticky floors, but nowadays a lot of that doesn't really exist. Most arcades that I've been to in the modern day, especially this one, are much bigger and brighter, and they have very clean floors, which is nice to see. But what's new is the philosophy of how to make money from these machines. Back in the old days, they would make a very addictive game that was very hard to master, and you would die a lot. That was the old arcade difficulty. And although there's a lot of arcade games that still retain that quintessential difficulty feature that is just so fun and addicting to play, a majority of the games now typically don't have that. But what they do have is a switch up on the old formula of redemption games. A redemption game is any style of arcade game that gives you tickets back from getting a high score. The higher your score is, the more tickets you get. Games like Skee Ball are very good examples of what redemption games are from the past. But in modern times, well, Dave & Buster's has really changed things up. No longer do you have tickets, but now all your tickets are stored digitally on a card. You exchange these digital tickets for any number of items you find at the redemption center. Things like gag gifts, mugs, t-shirts, and maybe even some candy here and there. But to get these rewards, you need to play a lot more than just Skee Ball. You'll also find games in the arcade that are redemption machines that also happen to be mobile games made in a large-scale format. Games like Crossy Road, which what I played seemed to be just as fun as the mobile version, but now, once you've played, you get some tickets back. But Crossy Road isn't alone. There's a bunch of these games that have been ported over from mobile phones. But of course, the modern arcade isn't just about redemption games, but you also have older style games from the past that have come back in a new format. In the 70s, 80s, and 90s, arcade machines were limited by the screen technology that was around them. But now, with modern screens, well, we can make really big arcade machines. Take a look at this. This is called World's Largest Pac-Man, and it is a huge version of Pac-Man that is amazingly fun to play. It's bright, it's incredibly colorful. It would have been just good enough being Pac-Man, but they also have Galaga on this sucker. I'm such a huge fan of Galaga, and to be able to play it on such a big screen is a really cool experience. But this exact same screen technology was used for another game on the floor. This one was Space Invaders. Unfortunately though, this doesn't play exactly like the original Space Invaders, but it's still fun nonetheless. The spaceship at the bottom firing upwards is no longer there, but with these two controllers you have in front of you, you're able to aim anywhere on the screen and eliminate as many Space Invaders as you possibly can. Oh yeah, and I might have forgot to mention, this is a ticket redemption game. Believe it or not, this is what they look like now. Most of the games I've shown you so far are games you can play at home one way or the other, but there are exclusive games in the arcade right now that you can't get anywhere else. Or in many instances, the experience of playing it is just a lot better in the arcade. This right here is Luigi's Mansion Arcade, and this is a very interesting oddity seeing as how this was a home console game turned into an arcade experience. In the past it would have been in reverse, but now the inspiration for arcade game design is coming from different sources that don't originate within the arcade. Luigi's Mansion Arcade plays nothing like the console original. This is an on-rail shooter where you've got a vacuum in hand, a really big one at that, and you have to suck up as many ghosts as possible. You also have to find hidden areas with coins using your little vacuum cleaner running around that old spooky mansion. While the gameplay is not inspired by the GameCube original, its visuals, its theme, and its whole identity really does come from that game, and it's so fun to see Nintendo experimenting with these kind of concepts in the arcade world. But of course, Nintendo is no stranger to the arcade universe, and they've made a lot of new arcade machines, including this one, Mario Kart Arcade. Now this is a really fun experience, filled with a whole bunch of characters, including Pac-Man for some reason, but to be able to play this with a group of people is really fun. Now there are a bunch of different game modes, but the basic racing of it actually doesn't work the same way Mario Kart works on consoles. This version here includes kind of a way to keep people very close in pace when it comes to racing. It gives advantages and disadvantages to people in front and behind so that you never quite know who's gonna make it out in the end on top. This right here is probably one of the most interesting arcade machines you're gonna find, and something you're probably never gonna see released at home. But hey, Nintendo, if you're listening, this one right here, Mario Kart GP DX, this is one you probably should put on the Switch. And while you're at it, why not bring over Cruisin' Blast? I didn't even know this arcade machine existed until I walked onto the arcade floor. This is essentially the old Cruisin' series that all of us know, but now it's got a whole new facelift. It plays wilder and crazier and faster than the earlier entries in the franchise, and it still has that radio switching trick where you can basically pick whole new vehicles by pushing the radio button when you go to your vehicle select, and that includes becoming a dinosaur. Because we needed that. Seriously, we needed that. But let's say Cruisin' Blast is not the exact same arcade racing experience you're looking for. How about trying a classic that is still in operation today in this arcade? Daytona USA. That's right, the original is right here, set up with all of the screens. It's a huge setup that takes a lot of space, but it's really fun to play, especially with friends. But this isn't the only large-scale arcade setup they have. They've also got Air Raid, This Is Not a Drill. Now you may not know this game, but there is a walk-in theater version where you basically walk into one huge booth, sit down with a group of friends, and basically shoot at a bunch of oncoming enemies. This arcade system is so big that once you're inside, you'll completely forget that you were in an arcade to start off with. Much like in the past, you'll find new games in arcades right now that are based off of existing properties or just very popular properties of the time, including The Walking Dead. This here is an on-rail shooter, but the way you shoot at things is using this kind of interesting crossbow controller that makes it feel more than a little bit difficult at points. But I think that's a part of the fun of this. Even if they brought this game home, you're likely not going to have the same experience because the controller is different. And speaking of games that would get lost in translation from bringing them home, this is Dark Escape 4D. This game is very cool, and you're only going to find it in arcades. To begin with, you get a set of 3D glasses, and if you're watching this video right now in VR, you're going to be seeing the game in true 3D. But 3D is only one of the features of this game. Not only that, but there's an air pump in the ceiling that will pump air at you at certain points, and the seat that you're sitting on will actually shake and vibrate. And in the controllers that you're holding themselves, there's a panic sensor that registers your heart rate. The game will dynamically change as you're playing it, and if it notices that you're not scared enough, it will throw more enemies at you and it will try and frighten you any way it possibly can. It's a pretty crazy experience and something you're unlikely going to find at home. The gameplay design is very similar to something like House of the Dead. It's an on-rail shooter and you basically have to just keep yourself alive for as long as possible. These kind of games seem to be more popular in the arcade simply because with the recent transition from CRT screens to flat screens, we lost the ability to use the old light gun technology at home. Modern game consoles don't actually have light gun games anymore, and if they have anything that's similar to this, you're basically moving a stick around really quick, or maybe using your mouse to aim. That quick rush to aim from the left and right of the screen as quick as you can is something that you really don't get anywhere outside of the arcades. I hope that this video has shown you that the modern arcade is still alive and doing incredibly well. There are brand new arcade systems being released every single day that are trying new and crazy concepts to get you in and to get you playing. What we've shown you is only a small fraction of the games that were available on the floor. There were still a ton more, and a lot of them were really fun to play. Arcades are always evolving and always changing and doing the best they can to keep people coming back. So if you've been to an arcade recently, there's a pretty good chance you should probably be going again just to see what's new. A special thanks to the Vaughan, Ontario Dave & Buster's for allowing us to film there. If you happen to be in the area and you've never been there before, I'd personally recommend going. And if you're not in the area, please support your local arcade.